Om Namaste. Why is service, seva, selfless activity on the spiritual path so important?
Om Namaste.
The concept of seva in Hinduism, in Sanskrit, refers to the principle of serving God, the divine, by subordinating one's egoistic motives and desires to serve the divine. This principle permeates the entire structure of Indian society, the entire structure of Vedic culture, and the philosophy of Sanatana Dharma. Without it, traditional Vedic culture would not be it, and modern India would not be India. Modern sadhus would not have been modern sadhus. Such refers to ancient ones. When asked why service is so important, let us imagine that a river could talk, and someone would come up to it and ask why it is important for you to flow, to babble, to be wet, to move somewhere. The river would laugh and say that it is not a question of importance. It is my nature, and I cannot do otherwise. Alternatively, the sun, if asked why it is important for you to shine, to sparkle, to hang in the sky, if the sun could speak, it would also say, "It is my nature. I was created like this." In the same way, to serve, to be in a state of seva, service to God, is the nature of the soul. It was created in this manner initially. It cannot do otherwise. That is, it can try differently, but it will not be successful. It will only lead to the disappointments of samsara, suffering, delusions, and a return to its original nature. The original nature of the soul is to serve God. The soul is created as a conductor of the divine will. The soul is created as an emanation of the divine will. The soul did not just appear out of nowhere. There is a massive plan behind this. This is where people are born and why they appear. Science has a limited understanding of how the body appears. However, it has a deeper understanding of how the soul appears and how it passes from one body to another during reincarnation. Where did it come from at the beginning of time, at the moment of the creation of the universe, when all souls were created and emerged from the unmanifested? In order to use the universe as a platform to do something, work out their karma, and move somewhere. If we reflect on this using the knowledge of the Holy Scriptures, we conclude that the creation of the soul is a mystery of God, a great plan. The soul is created to be a conductor of the divine will. It is a particle of God, inseparable from Himself, for which God has some big plans and big tasks so that it would be a conductor of His energy, His will, and His awareness. Each soul is a spore of the Most High, a spore of the Creator, a particle that in the future should blossom and become God the Creator, giving birth to a new universe, a new world. This nature is embedded in the soul, like a seed has its genetics, its tendency to grow, to produce leaves, flowers, fruits, and so on. Therefore, when we say why service is so important for the soul, the answer is simple. This is its nature, because this is how it has been arranged by the Divine Master and Creator of the universe. From time immemorial, it is the divine world order. And there are no other options, or rather, they exist since the free will also exists, but they will all be worse. For example, the Asuras, the Titans, do not recognize the principle of serving God, and it is more important for them to be guided by their ego motives. Asuras, the Titans, live in opposition to the divine world order, so we cannot call their lives wise, happy. Animals also do not feel the need to serve God. They live by instincts and desires, and the consciousness of an animal is incredibly selfish. One cannot say that they are happy or that they have realized themselves. They survive in samsara. The same can be said about hellish beings, hungry ghosts, pretas, and ghosts. In a slightly better position are the samsaric gods, enjoying creation, who can squander their merits in divine pleasures, but not thinking about serving the divine. All this is temporary. All these types of life are joyless, ungrateful, or temporary. Service, the principle of seva, the spirit of self-giving inherent in the soul. This is the only thing that truly elevates the soul, because this principle connects it with the divine source, with the first creator, with Shiva, with Brahman, the primordial consciousness. It is, so to speak, the metaphysics of the question, and without understanding such metaphysics, we will never understand why service is needed at a lower level. In a more practical sense, service helps the disciple to overcome their egoism, ignorance, and egoistic motives, as well as their egoistic views on life and habits. Service establishes a direct connection between the soul and God. Service means putting yourself in second place, putting God in first place, and learning to live in such a new state, in such a new disposition. Usually, all of us do not live in the spirit of service or motives of service. We act instinctively, obeying the law of karma, obeying the will of the impulses of our ego, vasanas and samskaras. We strive to embody our karmic impulses, to follow samskaras, and this is considered normal for us. It is easy and habitual for us to do what we wanted before, what we focused our attention on before, and what we focused on in past lives or at the beginning of this life. It is easy for us to do. We like it, and we want to live like this. And everything would be fine. But in the end, we discover that such a life leads us to a dead end in samsara. It leads to new suffering and new rebirth. It becomes emasculated and stops bringing joy and help, where there is no divine inspiration in it, and there is no connection with the heightening in it. It is how our ego usually acts, in which there is not even a hint of the desire for service, seva. There is no principle of seva. When suddenly we recognize this principle, it is like a flash of light. It is like the descent of some divine channel, which, like a ray of light, connects us with the luminous divine reality, with the cosmos of God. We understand, but it is possible to live differently. It is possible to have great divine goals in life. It is possible to serve great divine goals. It is possible not to be petty, mercantile, fixated on oneself, on one's small dreams, on one's own local limited culture, worldview. It is possible to truly live for the sake of the global, the great, the large scale, the wonderful, and the pure for the sake of the divine. Live in direct contact, immediate, without the intermediaries of the soul and God, tête-à-tête, directly. Live subordinating oneself to the great divine power and wisdom, and ultimately realize this wisdom and power as one's own. Here is the spirit of service. It radically unfolds and turns over the direction of the soul from its samskaras, karmic tendencies, from the egoistic will to the divine will, to the divine wisdom. Atmanivedana, surrender to Atman. Prapati Yoga is the yoga of discarding oneself. All these are synonyms when the soul learns to surrender to the divine source, tune into it, and learn to be its conductor. Seva is a way, a method that helps us do it best. Rishi Narada in the Bhakti Narada Sutra discussed the principles of Bhakti Yoga, a form of yoga that emphasizes devotional service. Shravana, Kirtan, Smarana, Pada, and finally Sevana, service, as one of the principles. The spirit of service cuts the root of our ego. When you are a servant, it is no longer important what you think, what you want. What is important is that you are in connection with God at the moment. For a servant, it does not matter what to do. The fruits and results are not important. The receipt of fruits and results is not important. Praise is not important, fame is not important, and pleasure from fruits and results is not important. For a servant, it is important not to lose this thin divine thread that connects the soul with its divine source. Therefore, when we follow the path of service, we often encounter situations that run counter to our usual notions of karma. Like that novice who, on the instructions of the elder, received the task of planting carrots with the roots up. Bewildered, he began to ask, what would come of such gardening, such farming? What would grow? It is an absurd, meaningless task. And the elder answered him, it is not the carrot, but the obedience that will grow, and your excellent qualities will also. In the same way, in the process of service, it may happen that in the material sense, we could not achieve anything at all, such as some special fruits, exceptional results, some special praise, special glory, exceptional material merit, but we will achieve much more value. We will achieve obedience to God. Obedience means we begin to hear the voice of God within ourselves, in the universe of creation, always and everywhere. It is such a valuable quality that it is difficult to overestimate it. The soul can hear God and live in unison with the voice of God. That is why service is important. It is the ability to let divine grace into yourself, because when you hear the divine voice, the voice within yourself or outside, you will find that this voice is very gracious, that you cannot help but be filled with grace when you hear the voice of God. Grace always comes with the voice of God, and to hear the voice of God means to be filled with the greatest bliss, the most incredible wisdom, the greatest happiness, and the amazement of meeting the divine. To be filled, there is no end to it. When the soul is filled with the voice of God, it is called Shiva Samavesha, fullness with the divine. When the sadhu says, Aveshamam, means enter me, the divine grace. Such fullness leads to merging with God, because when the soul is filled with divine grace, it begins to recognize the features of the divine in itself to the point of indistinguishability to inseparability. That is, at the moment when it is in grace, it does not even distinguish between I and God. It is called merging with Shiva, Shiva Sayujya. And when moments of such indistinguishability come, thanks to being in grace, the soul recognizes itself as Shiva, as God. From the very beginning, it was all one big game of Shiva, of myself. It turns out that I am not a jiva, It turns out that I am Shiva, the Lord Himself, the Absolute Himself, who has taken the form of a jiva and is playing for the sake of his own game. It is who I am. A revolution of consciousness occurs in the soul. A complete revision of life attitudes, worldview, and value attitudes. It turns out that I am Shiva. This is known as pratyabhijna, or self-recognition. In these processes, self-giving, prapati, Shiva Samavesha, is filled with God and grace. Shiva Sayuja, merging with Shiva, and Shiva Pratyabhijna, self-recognition of Shiva in oneself. These are the stages on the path of liberation that follow when we begin seva. That is, all this follows immediately after seva, if we are really in the flow of service, in the flow of self-giving, and if our bhakti yoga is accompanied by jnana yoga.
Om Namaste.